Welcome back to another episode on Anxiety Doesn't Own Me podcast. My name is Emmanuel Isaacson, and I'm an anxiety coach who helps people to overcome and heal their anxiety naturally. On today's episode, what I am going to be talking about is how our thoughts can create a reality that's not really there. And I'll explain to you what that means, of course, and I'll go into more detail about what I mean, and of course how to control this thing and how to change your own reality. And this is very important whenever we have anxiety, because whenever we have anxiety, we may feel as if something bad is going to happen. Like if we're going to have a panic attack, we're going to feel like as if it's actually going to happen, or something bad is going to happen, and all of a sudden it starts triggering our fight and fight mode. And whenever it triggers our fight and fight mode, we automatically feel a certain way. And then what happens is that we act according to that feeling. So we have this thought of something bad happening, and we're creating this reality of like how it's going to happen and what exactly is going to happen. We're asking like, what if this is going to happen? Like, I'll give you guys an example. Whenever I used to be terrified of flying, I would always picture the plane crashing, and that would freak me out. And what would happen is that I had this thought, that's number one, of the plane crashing. It made me feel very anxious. My anxiety started to raise. And what would happen is that I would avoid flying. Or if I had no choice, I would dread it the entire time. And I would have anxiety the entire time. And my actions of the entire time on the plane wouldn't be the one that is just relaxed and just enjoying itself and enjoying the flight. It's more of an anxious person. So you see, we have this thought that's creating this reality that's making us feel a certain emotion, and that emotion is creating a certain action. And the question over here is that, can we change that action? Can we change how we act in a situation? And the answer, of course, is that yes, we do have the power, and we could control how we act in certain situations and how we even feel and even think. We can even go that deeply into there. So like, let's say whenever we have anxiety, we have certain coping mechanisms that's going to help us to calm down. That's going to help us to calm down our anxiety, to make us feel much better. But if you see, it all starts with thought. That's the first thing that we need to, in a way, fix. But we're not fixing, we're changing. And we're in a more controlling, but controlling it in the right way. That's the key over here, controlling in the right way, so that way we can feel different and act differently. So for example, whenever someone's feeling very anxious, they always give that coping mechanism of doing the grounding technique. The grounding technique can help you to bring you out of your head, out of your reality that's in your mind, and bring you to the actual reality, what's going on around you, by using your five senses. And that helps you to calm down, and then you don't act according to your anxiety. That means you won't avoid the situation. You won't run away or anything like that. You would actually be able to stay there. So now, whenever someone has a thought about a certain situation of something bad happening, we have to know how to control that thought. Because at the end of the day, it's our thought that controls us. And this is why I always say mindset is key. If you have the right mindset, you can overcome your anxiety. So whenever we're having anxiety, if you realize, it's always a negative thought. It's always the negative thinking about like, what if something bad happens? Or what if I go and I have a panic attack? And what if I go and I get stranded? But what if I go and I get a heart attack? But what if I go and I faint? All these thoughts are all negative. And what we need to do is not to try to, again, fight the thought or try to stop having these thoughts, because they're going to pop up. Because again, our anxiety is there to protect us. It's there to make sure that we are going to stay alive and that we are going to feel fine and that we are going to feel good. And whatever protection that it needs to protect us from, it will do. It will operate according to that. So if we experience a certain thing, right, and that makes us feel very uncomfortable because we are afraid of something bad happening, and that we may be afraid that we may faint or we may die or may have a heart attack, our anxiety is going to try to control us. So now trying to control that thought that the anxiety throws at us is not going to really help. Of course, we need to heal the anxiety. We need to heal it in order for it to stop triggering for no reason. That's something we need to do. But right now, we're talking about the thoughts that we have in order to change it so that way we can be able to battle the anxiety and help us to feel much better. So whenever we have that thought, instead of thinking about it in a negative way, we can think about it in a positive way. So for example, if we are afraid of driving, we can say to ourselves, okay, the reason why I'm afraid of driving is because I may get into an accident. So we can look at the statistics of what's the chances of you getting into an accident. Let's say 5%, 10%. That's pretty high, by the way. But let's say it's 10%, but 90%, you're going to be fine. So why are we focusing on the 10%? Why? What does that help us with? And think about it. Think about the past. Have you ever gotten into an accident? Even if you have, but how many times have you actually driven and everything was fine? Most of the time, nothing bad happened, but it was that maybe that one time or that you may feel like it may happen and it's scary that's making you feel that way. But if we change the focus, say, you know what? The chances of something bad, the chances of me getting into a car accident is 10%. Why not focus on the 90% of actually everything's going to be fine? So we can minimize the thought and the anxiety, but just showing like, hey, what's the chance? And we can make it so small to make it like, oh, it's not really a big deal. Because the anxiety makes it a much bigger deal than it actually is. Like, for example, whenever you have symptoms, right, what happens is that you automatically freak out and say, oh, it's a deadly thing. I'm gonna die. I need to go to the hospital. Like whenever I used to have chest pains, every time I would go straight to the hospital because I thought I was dying. But the reality was it was just anxiety and my heart was fine. Nothing bad happened to it. So we can change the thought. So whenever we change the thought and we focus like, wait, 90% of the time, I'm really going to be fine. Even 95% of the time, I'm going to be fine. So why am I focusing on the 5%? What does that help me with? That automatically helps you to calm down. Like I remember when I used to fly, and I used to be terrified of flying, I was doing a lot of research about flying and the chances of the plane crashing, and the chances of it happening is literally less than 1%. And I said to myself, I'm like, Emmanuel, there are thousands of flights around the world happening every single day, and you barely hear about a plane crash. You barely hear about that. So what makes you think that it's going to happen to you? Why not focus on the 99.6% that where you're going to be fine and the flight is going to be great and it's going to be safe? Why are we focusing on that small percentage? What does it help you with? I asked myself. It hasn't. It made me avoid the plane, and it made me dread every single second being on the flight, and it hasn't helped me whatsoever. Whenever I thought about that way, my anxiety automatically came down, and I felt much better, and I act differently. I went on the plane, I actually enjoyed the flight, and I actually had a good time, which was something different completely. And I looked at that, I gave that an example, and I started to use that everywhere. Wherever my anxiety would start building this reality of what's going to happen, I'm like, wait, who says that's going to happen? Like, I'll give you another example about me, is that I used to be afraid of being alone because I was afraid I was going to faint and crack my head open. But I asked myself, like, Emmanuel, you have been here already whenever I used to be with anxiety. I'm like, you have been in this world for 20 years. Not once have you fainted. Not once have you experienced that. And even with your anxiety, for however long that was, I never fainted whatsoever. So why do you think that's going to happen again? It doesn't mean that. And I would say to myself, it's the anxiety creating that reality. And I have to catch that thought and actually change the thought so I can change my emotion so my actions are different. So that way I'm going to have to be with somebody. Now, another thing that you can do whenever you are trying to work on your thought and try to change your reality, the most powerful thing that you can do besides trying to minimizing the risk of something bad happening to you is by looking at things more in a positive way. And I know I talk about this all the time because it's such a big thing. Because if you see, the thought creates the emotion creates the action. Now, if we have a negative thought, we're going to have a negative emotion and we're going to have a negative action. But if we have a positive thought, we're going to feel more positive, and that way we're going to act more positively. So we need to change the negative thoughts that we have in our brain, in our mind, and that reality that it's creating to more of a positive one. And this is what comes with self-esteem, self-confidence. It's such a big thing. So whenever someone thinks that they're not capable in doing it, they're going to feel that way and they're going to act accordingly. They're not, like say for example, someone doesn't believe that they're capable of overcoming their anxiety. They're going to feel demotivated. They're going to feel down. Do you think the actions that somebody has is going to be the one of someone that feels like they're capable in overcoming it? Like with me, with my belief, whenever I came, which I talked about a few episodes ago about belief, that whenever I came to that point of like, I wanted to take my own life, that I didn't want to continue, that's whenever I had a change within me in belief, like, hey, I need to get out of this. I have no other choice. That's what it is. So my back was against the wall and I had no other choice. And that what made me change my entire thought process about the anxiety. And that literally pushed me forward in overcoming my anxiety, because before I wasn't operating as someone who thought that they were capable or had to overcome my anxiety. So the thought, that moment changed my entire reality, and the way I felt about the situation and my actions were completely different. So the most powerful thing whenever you're trying to change your thought is, number one, don't try to stop the thought. Don't try to control the thought and say, I don't want to think like this anymore and I'm sick and tired of thinking like this. That doesn't help. What you want to do is like, hey, you know what? I have this thought, but let's change it now. By providing evidence, by minimizing the actual event that's going to happen, and also by implementing positive things about the situation, about yourself, about things, whatever it is. We want to look at it more in a positive way, and that's going to help us to feel much better, and that's going to make us act differently. And this is going to help you guys with your anxiety. It's going to take you some time to get used to, but if you work on it every single day, you'll see your anxiety, you'll have more control over your anxiety, and you start feeling much better. If you did like this episode, please click the like button and leave a 5-star review. The reason why I ask is because this way we're able to reach more people, and the more people that we can actually reach, the more people that we can actually help. Because my mission in this world, my purpose is to help people to overcome and heal their anxiety naturally and show them that it's possible to overcome. Thank you guys. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.